I want to start my conversation today with this text. It's from Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49. This was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. I throw out this text to begin with because, one, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah has been used as a clobber text against our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. When the prophet actually speaks to what are the issues, the actual issue, and when you actually read that story in Genesis, it's a story about being inhospitable. It's a story about people who have not opening their doors to people who are in need. And when the prophet actually gets around to highlighting this, immediately goes to the issue of food. That they were a place that had an excess of food and prosperous ease. They had convenience. They had things accessible to them at all times. And yet, in their excess of food, in their ease, in their convenience, they did not aid the poor and the needy. Because the fact of the matter is, very clearly, we produce enough food in this country. We produce enough healthy food in this country. The problems are problems of access.
Hi everyone, my name is Howard Allen and I am co-owner with my wife Reniqua of Faithful Farms. In terms of faith and looking at lands in terms of access to land, that was a challenge for me in the beginning. And we do have our own land, but it's mostly wooded. However, as a beginning farmer, it's really challenging to find access to land that's cleared or what we consider to be farmland. And so I was fortunate that I was connected to a church that was near my house that had open land. And with my church, the biggest challenge for me was just people being connected to the land or the lack thereof. And especially with a majority African American congregation, it was obvious that people had what I call land trauma. And that obviously goes back to the traumas of this country and the birthing of this country, through chattel slavery and all of the brutalities that, have been surrounded, on the land. But however, in spite of that, there was always a disconnect with the church. And even today, 6 years later, there's still a big disconnect. I think most of us are disconnected with the land. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I think number two, we're disconnected with our food sources. And also too, we've been indoctrinated to think of food as something cheap, think as food as, something that you really don't see the process, but you get the benefits of it. And I think some of the side effects in terms of health-related issues, dietary issues, I think are somewhat related to those struggles.
As community leaders or as faith leaders or as nonprofit leaders in your communities have, in my opinion, a unique superpower when it comes to challenging corporate power. And that's the power to patiently shape cultural narratives in your communities around the power dynamics that are at play in our food system. Egypt in this story serves as this paradigmatic example of what empire is and how it operates. But in God's manna culture, in Yahweh's manna culture, there's abundant food for all with a catch. And the catch is you can't hoard it, right? In that story, if you try to hoard manna that was provided today, it'll start to rot and stink, and everyone will know that you tried to hoard the manna, because the core point to that manna lesson and that manna story is that Yahweh is trying to tell the people, I've actually created a world where there's abundance for all, but that only works if you don't hoard like empires do, right? And if you start to hoard like empires do, everything's going to start to rot and decay and fall apart.